love you. And I love you so much for so long that I don't care if we don't talk. We can just sit here and look at each other for the next half hour.
First, I'd like to compliment my colleagues from Barolo that were here on the stage, and that they showed their excellent Barolo and so on, but with a very fluent English. It's not mine. But if you give me the chance of being here again another time, I can guarantee you that I will be studying better English, okay?
Well, in fairness, I tricked you. Because last time you were here, you said, this is it. I'm turning over to my kids. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I tricked you to come back. So there's so much to talk about, but I want to reminisce for a second. The year was 1996. For many years, I had already known you for a long time, but for many years I would ask you to be on the program. And you always smiled and said, no. My English is terrible, I can't do it. Now that I'm the godfather, I can use a little bit of... So finally, you agreed, right here in this room, 1996. And I was so excited. And I introduced you, and then for the first time ever and since, I left the room, went up to the balcony to just watch. And you presented yourself and your wines for 20, 30 minutes. And then I saw something that was so extraordinary that I never, ever expected. When the program was over, when people usually all rushed to leave the room, there was a line from the front of the room to the back of the room, people waiting in line to come up to you, to shake your hand, maybe kiss your ring. I don't know what the hell they're doing. I thought I was in the Vatican and you were the fucking Pope. Do you remember that experience? Do you remember? Use your microphone if you do.
Yes, I remember. I believe that was the beginning of the interest for Italian wines. And it took time. I believe that is important even rolling, okay. You can see Italy. There are 20 regions. In every region, there are native varieties, indigenous varieties. There is no, everywhere, each region has its own varieties. Totally are 350, and each region makes its own wine. There is no other country in the world that has this privilege. It's something special. In effect, Italy has the chance of playing well on two tables, the tables of international grape varieties and the table of native indigenous varieties. And I believe that Italy was able to show that even on the table of international grape varieties, they were able, Italians, especially in Tuscany, to make excellent wines. So just to tell you, but everybody know how Cabernet Sauvignon from the Sassicaia became absolutely top quality wines and desired everywhere in the world. But our cradle, our mine, that are 350, probably some of you know, of course, or the large majority of you knows that we have some grape variety that is able, already recognized for producing wines, such as Barolo, such Montalcino, okay, and even Aglianico in southern Italy. But, and even in some grape varieties, white, we can produce excellent white wines and so on. But I repeat, our native indigenous grape varieties represent absolutely a richness for Italy. And maybe that this is the opportunity in future, in my opinion. Why I am optimistic about Italy? Because of that. In Italy, we have, for large majority of people outside of Italy, wine is lifestyle. But in Italy, wine is life. It's so integrated in our culture. And sometimes, and sometimes we have, especially in the last decades, it happened that we had warnings that you don't know who puts the warnings. The government, some association, health association, telling, for example, drink less, you have to drive. And immediately there are people that is writing, drive less, you have to drink. Because, or even alcohol kills you slowly. Of course,
well,
we
listen,
are not in a hurry.
If any of you, or those of you who haven't watched the original interview that's on the web now, you really need to watch it because he talks about. I remember you brought up about when you went to see Mondavi, and you were struck by the fact his advertising said, "Drink in moderation."
Yes.
And that blew you away. In other words, you said in Italy it's drink as much as you can. In America, they're telling you not to drink.
Drink in moderation. I don't like. The concept of moderation has a negative meaning even. I prefer drink by responsibility, with good sense, and drink correctly, and have the wine with food, seated at the table. This is the way. This is our culture. And having people with and so on. And even look, the table is special because who chooses the wine? You remember that when you asked for having the wine list, and that the people there hadn't, but this was 45 years ago. So who's choosing the wine? It reaches in.
I want to ask you a few questions because I have a feeling if I don't interrupt you every now and then, you're going to go on for 30 minutes and I'll fall asleep and I won't know what happened. And I think people would love to hear these stories.
Yes.
So you first came to America in 1974.
Yes.
You were 34 years old. You were running a small family winery that nobody ever heard of.
Yes.
The world didn't
Absolutely.
care about. I want to go into your head. You're living in Barbaresco. I don't even know, were there train stations? How many hours were you from an airport? You're in Nowhereville. What made you want to come to America? What was your goal? Why did you come to America in 1974?
In the winery, me and my collaborator, we decided to choose two areas to expand our interest: United States and the area speaking German language. I remember many of my colleagues choosing some other countries. England, very Francophile. French, very difficult to be recognized there, of course. And I don't know, by chance. But this,
Did you,
finally...
you didn't even speak English then?
No, yes, absolutely.
So,
You're right.
Who did you bring an
My
interpreter?
English was called Angelese, you know, because I was thinking, speaking a kind of English very close to my Italian language.
Did you have an appointment to see any wineries in Napa Valley? Did you just, I mean, how did this all come about? Did
No,
somebody plan the trip?
I remember at the time Napa was not, of course, like I remember that I visited Freemark Abbey, I visited some, and finally I visited Mondavi. That we became a very good friend. In 74. Zelma Long was working there. Yeah. And this, you know, step by step, I started, but was for sure, what was difficult, the fact that at that time, the white wine, the Italian wines were seen like cheap and cheerful. I was not producing, I unable to produce a cheap and cheerful wines, first. Second, I was working for an underdog wine because Barbaresco was considered much below Barolo. So this probably was but I had the enthusiasm, I believe that I had passion, I was welcomed step by step doing.
So I'm skipping around. But 1985, he packed his whole family and moved to San Francisco. Yeah. And the expressed
trying to study English.
To study English.
Never learned.
And you failed. But his whole family packed up, moved to California,
and visiting wineries and knowing, and the experience, of course, with Mondavi was fantastic because we became a very good friend, and he liked to introduce me and to know what it was, his experiences, the new wines, the way that his attitude in being fantastic. Great man.
So, you know, did you spend your time calling on retailers and restaurateurs or going to classes to learn how to speak English?
No, for me, English was always very difficult. But even languages, I am not a good student in languages. But okay, after some time, you know, and I promise you, if you give me the second time to be here again, I will be studying more. Okay.
So, again, in the interview, I asked you, do you remember when we first met?
Yes.
And you said it was February 1980. I actually thought it was a little earlier, but I trust you. I don't remember when it was, but and you went through this whole story, which we're not going to go through, but if you watch the video, it goes on for 10 minutes. I got more than I bargained for when I asked the question of the episodes during that 48-hour. But I didn't ask you, and I don't remember, how did it come about that I went to Barbaresco to visit you, whether it was 1980 or 1978, whatever, we can dispute the date. Do you have any idea why I went to see you?
I was very surprised because this happened in the month of February. Right. At that time, nobody was there visiting, nobody. And even in a very freezy day with the snow and so on, incredible. And so I immediately understood that you had come there not for selling me something, that you were there, that of course you had interest in Italian wines. And you were not the editor that you are now.
No, but I think I bought the Spectator a year or two earlier when it was what we call a nothing burger. But I did know. And I was just thinking about this in the last 24 hours. I was trying to figure out why I would even want to go see you. And I'm guessing it was either Neil Empson, who was your importer, or maybe Lule Cucci, who was a retailer, but really, really passionate about Italian wines in New York. But I don't remember. I don't remember. But I went to see you. It was in the wilderness. I couldn't believe that I went there. I mean, it was like it's like going to the North Pole.
You were completely unknown at the time. You know, I'm very sorry. But and me, I was nothing. I was absolutely a producer on an underdog wine, you know, and after in 45 years, you know what you did, because, you know, look at the people that you are here following you during the
you know,
oh my God.
over the years, Hazel and I have seen you in many places. Lots of times it's a surprise. We're there, you're there, we meet and so forth, and we laugh all the time. And if I wasn't in publishing, I'd want to be your travel agent because I'd get like 10% commission. I could live very well. I mean, in those days, I don't know about that, you traveled all the time. I don't know how many trips a year. And it wasn't like a 2-day trip. I mean, you would spend so much time on the road.
I normally was used traveling and being in the States 2-3 times a year, and even spending 2 or 3 weeks per time. So in effect, when Giovanni was born in Barbaresco, that is a little village, and when they knew that my wife was pregnant, they were surprised, and they started saying...
How old is Gaja? What year was she born?
Sorry?
Gaja, your daughter.
Gaja was born in 79.
Aha! Well, maybe.
You were
she was
there
in your mother's arms.
Yes, of course.
She was 3 months old. So.
You were there in February 80 when Gaja was
right.
8 months, exactly.
All right, so maybe it was.
But when Lucia was pregnant of Giovanni, because I was a frequent traveler in the United States, the people in Barbaresco that are very curious, they started saying that we had Giovanni by fax.
So for those of you who are old enough to remember, in the 70s, in the 80s, Italian wine, I saw Pier Antonori a minute ago. He's in the room here somewhere. He can certainly confirm it. Italian wines were nothing.
Nothing.
I mean, I'm being kind. I'm being kind. They were nothing. They were $2. They were $3. They were straw. They were jug wines.
Let me say, I believe that Italy did a fantastic, Italian producers, Italian grape growers, Italian wine producers did a big step. And what is, I believe, important in the way that we work there, the Italian, wine producers and the grape growers work, they have they believe that the best wines are on the slope of the hills, are made by vineyards on the slope of the hills. No, it's not that, it's different. You know, in France, the great wines are on plain, absolutely. But in Italy, we believe, and we have vineyards, I repeat, everywhere. The culture of vineyards is very strong, and in Italy, there are more than 30,000 wineries. So you know, a minority. That 30,000 is a big number, made by producers that have a passion, that are conscious in their job, and that they like cultivate and making through the indigenous, native grape varieties, making unique wines, different. So Italy is a cradle, is a mine of differences. And I believe that in future, this will be important. So we had success, principally at the moment, with international grapes. But we have this Fort Knox of indigenous grape varieties that will be very precious in future.